It was a Wednesday night in late November, the kind of night that arrives early and stays heavy. Dark by 4:30, cold enough that the windows fog at the edges, the kind of cold that makes a small house feel smaller. I had finished work around 6, eaten dinner at my desk while watching something forgettable on my laptop, and spent the rest of the evening doing nothing in particular. By 11:30, I was on the couch with a book I was not really reading. The television was off. The house was quiet in the way it always is that late. The particular silence of a neighborhood where everyone has gone to bed, and the streets have emptied, and there is nothing moving outside except the occasional car passing at the far end of the road. I know the sounds of that house the way you only know a place you have lived in alone for a long time. Every pipe, every settling groan from the walls, every particular creak from the third step of the porch when the temperature drops. When you live somewhere alone long enough, the sounds of the building become a kind of language. You learn what is normal and what is not. What I heard at 11:48 was not normal. 3 knocks at the back door, not fast, not urgent, not the kind of knock that carries a voice behind it. No hello, no announcement. No sense of someone standing on the other side waiting to be recognized. Just 3 slow, heavy impacts against the wood. Deliberate, measured and spaced apart in a way that felt less like someone asking to be let in and more like someone testing the resistance of the door itself. I set my book down and sat very still. My back door opens onto a small concrete patio that is enclosed by a wooden fence. The gate latches from the inside. There is no reason for anyone to be back there at 11:48 on a Wednesday night. No reason I could think of, anyway. I waited. Maybe a full minute passed. The house stayed quiet. I had almost convinced myself it was the wind catching something on the fence, a loose board, a hanging planter, when it came again. Louder this time. 4 hits instead of 3, and harder, with a force that carried through the door and into the wall beside it. Not aggressive exactly, more insistent. The way you knock when you know someone is inside and you want them to understand that you know. I stood up slowly from the couch. I did not go to the door. Every instinct I had told me not to go to the door. Instead, I moved to the kitchen doorway where I could see the back door from a distance without being directly in front of it, and I stood there in the dark and watched. The doorknob moved. Not all at once, slowly, a gradual rotation to the right, then back to center, then a rotation to the left, back and forth. The quiet, methodical movement of someone working a handle from the outside, testing the lock, checking the mechanism, patient, unhurried, like whatever was on the other side of that door had decided it was going to figure out the lock eventually and was in no particular rush. I pressed myself against the kitchen wall and pulled out my phone. My hands were already unsteady when I dialed. The operator answered on the second ring, calm and professional, and I kept my voice as low as I could manage, barely above a whisper, as I gave her my address and told her someone was trying to get in through my back door. There was a brief silence on the line. Not the silence of someone checking a system or pulling up an address, something shorter than that. A pause that felt, even through the phone, like a recalibration. Then she asked, "Are you alone in the house?" "Yes," I whispered. Another pause, slightly longer. "Are you sure?" My stomach dropped so fast I felt it in my legs. "Yes," I said, but my voice had changed when I said it. I heard the change myself. "Officers are on the way," she said. Her voice had changed too. Still controlled, still professional, but with a precision to it now that had not been there before, like someone choosing every word carefully. "Stay where you are. Do not look behind you." I heard the words. I processed them, and then my brain simply refused to accept them for a moment because they did not fit the situation I thought I was in. "What?" I whispered. "Stay exactly where you are," she repeated with the same careful precision. "Do not turn around." The knocking at the back door had stopped. The doorknob had stopped moving. The house was completely, absolutely silent. And I became aware, in the way you become aware of something that your body understood before your mind did, that the silence was not empty. I cannot explain how I knew. There was no sound, there was no movement I could see. There was nothing I could point to and say that was the moment I understood. It was more primitive than that. Some deep, wordless part of me that exists below thought and language simply registered that the air in the room had changed. The quality of the darkness behind me was different from the darkness in front of me, that I was not alone in the kitchen. Then I felt it. Warm air on the back of my neck. A single, slow, soft exhalation. The kind of breath that comes from something standing close enough to touch. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of it against my skin, moving the small hairs at the base of my skull. Something was standing directly behind me. I did not move. I could not move. Every muscle in my body locked simultaneously, the way they do in that fraction of a second before something catastrophic happens, when your nervous system understands the situation completely and decides that stillness is the only available response. "I think someone is in here with me," I whispered into the phone. My voice came out completely flat. There was no room left in me for tone. "We know," the operator said. Those two words rearranged something in me permanently. Not "we are aware that you believe someone is in there." Not "we are treating this as a possibility." "We know." Present tense. Stated as simple fact, the way you confirm something that has already been established. Which meant they had known before I told them. Which meant that whatever was behind me in that kitchen, whatever was close enough that I could feel its breath on my neck, was not new information to the person on the other end of that phone. I stood in the dark, and I did not turn around, and I tried to control my breathing because somewhere in the part of my brain that was still functioning, I understood that whatever was behind me was listening to every sound I made. I could hear it now. Not clearly, not footsteps, not movement exactly. More like the subtle shift of weight, the near imperceptible sound of something adjusting its position in the dark. Slow, careful. And beneath that, barely at the edge of perception, something that might have been breathing, though not quite in the rhythm of something that needed to breathe. The operator's voice came back, quiet and precise. "When I tell you to run, you run straight to the front door. Do not stop. Do not look back. Do you understand?" I could not speak. I pressed my lips together and exhaled once through my nose to tell her yes. Behind me, I heard my bedroom door creak open. I had not heard anyone walk down the hallway. There had been no footsteps, no sound of movement between where I was standing and the bedroom at the back of the house. The door simply opened, slow and quiet, the way it opens when I push it myself, that familiar creak from the top hinge that I have been meaning to fix for 2 years. I felt the air in the kitchen shift. "Now," the operator said. I ran. I have no memory of the hallway, no memory of my hand on the front door or the lock turning or the door swinging open. I have no memory of the porch steps or the front path. I have a single image of my bare feet hitting the cold concrete of the street, and then there were lights, red and blue strobing against the houses on both sides of the road, and 2 patrol cars angled across my driveway with their doors already open. An officer caught me by the arm before I had fully registered that I had stopped running. He said something I did not hear. I was looking back at my house, the front door hanging open, light from the hallway spilling out onto the porch, the windows dark. 2 officers went in with flashlights and hands on their holsters. I stood on the street in my socks and waited. The officer who stayed with me was young, mid-20s, calm in the practiced way of someone who has been trained to appear calm regardless of what they are feeling. He asked me standard questions. How long had I been home? Had I seen anyone in the yard earlier that evening? Was there anyone who had a key to the property? Then, after a pause that felt slightly too long, he asked, "Why did you stop in the hallway?" I looked at him. "I didn't stop in the hallway," I said. "I ran straight to the front door." He looked at me steadily. "We were watching the house from the moment we turned onto your street. We had eyes on your front window and your doorway." He paused. "You were standing still in the hallway for almost 4 minutes before you came out. The cold that moved through me then had nothing to do with the November air. I ran as soon as she told me to, I said. I did not stop. I did not stand in the hallway. I went straight out. The officer was quiet for a moment. Then he turned slowly and directed his flashlight back toward the open front door of my house. He held the beam on the doorway for a long moment without saying anything. Then, quietly, almost to himself, "Then who were we watching in your doorway the whole time?" They searched the house for 40 minutes. Every room, every closet, the space under the bed, the crawl space access in the bathroom, the small storage area beneath the back porch steps. They found no one. The back door was still locked from the inside. The gate latch in the back fence was still fastened. Every window was closed. No signs of forced entry anywhere on the property. The lead officer came out and spoke to me on the front path for a long time. He was careful with his words, in the way that people are careful when they have seen something they cannot categorize. He told me the house was clear. He told me they would have a patrol unit drive past every hour for the rest of the night. He told me I should stay somewhere else if I had somewhere to go. He did not tell me what they found. He did not tell me what they saw in that doorway for 4 minutes while they waited for me to come out. I have called that precinct twice since that night. Both times I was told that the incident report from that evening contains no description of any individual observed in or around the property. Both times the officer I spoke to ended the call a little faster than felt natural. I stayed at a motel that night, a chain place off the highway, the kind with fluorescent lighting and a deadbolt and a chain lock, and I lay on top of the covers with every light on and did not sleep until after 5 in the morning. When I went back to my house the next day, I stood in the kitchen for a long time. I stood in exactly the spot where I had been standing when I felt that breath on my neck, and I tried to reconstruct the geometry of the room. The distance between where I was and the back door, the angle of the hallway behind me, the specific place where something would have had to stand to be close enough for me to feel what I felt. It would have been standing less than a foot behind me. For how long, I do not know. The operator said, "We know," not "we believe you," not "we are sending someone to check." We know, which means someone, some person in that dispatch center, or someone they were in contact with, was already aware that something was inside my house before I told them, before I even called. I have thought about that every day since it happened. I still live in that house. I know that probably sounds like the wrong decision. People ask me why I did not move, and I never have a completely satisfying answer. Part of it is practical: leases, deposits, the exhausting logistics of relocating. Part of it is something harder to name, a stubbornness maybe, a refusal to let one night restructure the entire geography of my life. But I will tell you what has changed. I do not stand with my back to open rooms anymore. It is not a conscious decision I made. It is just something my body started doing on its own, the way you start checking both ways twice after a near miss at an intersection. I position myself against walls. I sit facing doors. I am aware always of the space behind me in a way I never was before. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, when the house is very quiet and the night has gone past a certain hour, I feel it again. Warm air on the back of my neck. One slow, soft breath, like something reminding me that it remembers I never turned around. I have tried to find a rational explanation for every piece of what happened that night. The knocking, a person, a branch, a loose piece of fencing. The doorknob, the mechanism settling in the cold, a draft creating pressure against the frame. The breath on my neck, my own body heat reflecting off a surface, my imagination filling in what my fear had already decided was there. I can build that case. I can lay out each piece and make it sound almost reasonable. But then I come back to the officer standing on my front path in the dark, pointing his flashlight at my open doorway, and I hear his voice again. Quiet, careful. The voice of someone who has just seen something they have no category for. Then who were we watching in your doorway the whole time? I do not have an answer for that. I do not think I am going to get one. And on the nights when the house goes very quiet and the air behind me shifts in that particular way, I do not turn around. I have not turned around once, because whatever was standing in my kitchen that night, close enough to breathe on the back of my neck, standing still in my doorway for 4 minutes while the police watched from the street, it has never touched me. And I think somehow that not turning around is the reason why. Stay safe, guys.